Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around I am playing as the forces of the Empire against the nasty Wood Elves here. So I've been with Mortal Empires. There was a lot of I guess complaints on the forums and a lot of people bringing up the idea that the Empire is outdated. I myself and got kind of hamstrung a bit by the new additions and the upgrades to the old factions that it didn't really receive equivalence to, and to an extent I kind of agreed with some of these, especially against High Elves. There's definitely been some rough matchups, and kind of against, to some extent, against the revised Wood Elves, and definitely the Empire's definitely kind of gotten more competition, which I think is good because the Empire's always kind of been dominant, just because it's such a flexible faction. But it's kind of, all this has kind of encouraged me to try out Empire more and more in Quick Match and just try to get more gameplay out of what's basically my favorite faction. So here I'm trying them out against the kind of new and improved Wood Elves, knowing of course that I can't bring. Now there are quite a few changes, and a lot of them. One of the biggest problems for Empire is that you're now limited to only 2 heroes. Before you could always go to one of the good combinations was you'd bring Flying Lord, you'd bring 2 captains, and then you'd bring a mage. And now you're limited to either a captain and a mage, or 2 captains and dropping the mage, something like that, which is definitely a little unfortunate, definitely a little kind of disheartening. Definitely kind of is definitely one of the challenges for Empire. There have also been some nerfs. Some of their units, Demigryphs for example, arguably got nerfed with the changes to model count and the way the units laid out. Great Swords got nerfed in speed, that sort of stuff. So there have been some changes, and but I did want to give him a fair shake here, trying him out against the revised Wood Elves. So for my Lord, I did decide to bring Boris Toadbringer. He actually did get a change or a buff in this last patch. He did get the access to the White Cloak of Ulrich, which is a unique ability that is a constant negative 6% movement speed and negative 9 melee attack to all enemies within range, which is combined with the fact that he does have, of course, Midland Runefang still. He does have Crush the Weak, which was actually nerfed, used to provide a greater debuff, but much like the buffs and debuffs of other factions were all nerfed with this last patch. So was Crush the Weak, so I think that was only fair. I did bring him with Foe Seeker as well as Deadly Onslaught. The main reason, though, that I brought Boris was really because of Midland Runefang. He's a cheap lord with regen, which is now no longer accessible for anybody in Empire except for Volkmar, who of course can get the Jade Griffin. Alongside him, I did bring, well, I mentioned the captains in a little bit. A front line of swordsmen mixed in with a single unit of the Sigmar's Sons. These guys are, of course, unbreakable. Swordsmen still trade very, very well with most of what the Wood Elves can bring. Unfortunately, with the buffs to Dryads can definitely give these guys a much greater run for their money, so you definitely need to be wary of that. Was definitely a little worried going into this match for how to deal with Dryads. I also brought the Tattersouls, who, of course, are the regiment of Renown Flagellants. They have higher model count, have better charge bonus. They're just a very powerful unit. In spite of the fact that Wood Elves have a lot of shooting, if you can get these guys into melee, they will absolutely shred most Wood Elf units. So definitely not a bad unit. I did actually bring a bit of a shooting line, but only stealthed. I brought Sterling's Revenge as well as the Silver Bullets, and once again, this is simply because these guys have stealth. Wood Elves can, of course, well, if they can see your shooting, they will gun you down from outside of your range. And you really need your shooting to be armor piercing, in part to deal with Dryads, in part to deal with Treekin, in large part to deal with dragons and that sort of stuff, or tree men. Now it's less important against dragons because they do have physical resistance, but that actually makes the Silver Bullets all the more important. I also did bring a great cannon just to apply some pressure, hopefully force my opponent to come to me, shoot at high priority targets, that sort of stuff. And then really my main striking force, 2 units of Knights of the Blazing Sun, each attached to an Empire captain, on just a normal horse. And these guys are really there to kind of punish my opponent, hopefully get into his backline, crash into his archers, crush any Dryads if my opponent goes Dryad heavy, because these guys have fire damage. These guys also have magic resistance, which is actually really good against Wood Elves, whose the armor piercing you'll usually see out of Wood Elves is, of course, Starfire Shafts, which my opponent did bring here, and these guys are actually resistant to that. Now you can see I'm trying to snipe the enemy Glade Lord and having a really bad time of it. My opponent did bring a rather wide build. You can see body count wise, he actually outnumbers me by a tiny bit. My opponent did bring a lady on an Eagle. The Eagle's actually buffed recently. The lady stats on her are pretty effective. She's still an effective lord, but she did lose, of course, her heal. My opponent also brought a her potion. My opponent also brought a Branch Wraith from Penumbral Pendulum and Earthblood, so of course those crazy heals, and then Call of the Woods, which is a nice little buff. Interestingly enough, he did bring Blessing of the Ancients, which is in my opinion not a worthwhile talent to bring on most maps, because most maps don't have enough trees to make that consistent. Then my opponent brought a fairly thin front line of a handful of Eternal Guard, though these guys will still hold very, very well against Empire Swordsmen. A unit of Dryads behind that just to provide some melee support. 2 units of Azrai Spears to shut down that nasty Empire Cavalry. 3 units of Deepwood Scouts to really kind of shoot my troops up, and who are kind of spread out here. They're mingled in with the Gladiator with Starfire Shafts to shut down any armor I might bring. And finally, out on the flank, my opponent does have 2 units of Glade Riders with Hagbane tips. And of course, I don't really want to be fighting these with my cavalry. I can't really trade with them with my Knights of the Blazing Sun, so I'm just simply pulling Boris away. I'm pulling my Knights away, and I'm sneaking up my Silver Bullets. I actually pulled Sterling's Revenge out of the way and preemptively and turned my Great Cannon around. I'm going to be able to engage on these guys. You can see my opponent is peppering me with a little bit of poison arrows. But those poison arrows, the Hagbanes are magical, so they'll actually do less against the Knights of the Blazing Sun. And you can see the opening volley here goes out on the Hagbanes from the Silver Bullets and actually takes off 5 models and about a third of their HP practically instantly. So a very, very solid trade there for me. My opponent has gotten very little out of this. And you can see another few models do get dropped here. Definitely the Silver Bullets, just because you can get some beautiful ambushes, are very, very strong. In the meantime, my cannon is coming online and starting to snipe off models. If you can pick off models, that is absolutely critical. You can see my opponent's lost say 18 models in that trade, so definitely very good for me. I haven't lost any models yet. I did turn these swordsmen around just in case my opponent decided to push in. And I'm now just going to push into my opponent's troops. I feel fairly comfortable engaging him. I did suspect there were some stealthy shenanigans. Usually, if you can do some quickly think out based on what your opponent's brought, how much he's missing or how much you're not seeing, or if you're not seeing something, then that's usually a good idea. And you can see the cannon is still working on these Hagbanes and doing a good job of it. Now, my opponent immediately starts focusing on my swordsmen, and despite the fact that these guys do have bronze shields, they will go down very, very quickly against Starfire Shafts and Deepwood Scouts and all that sort of stuff. They simply don't have either the armor or the they just don't have the survivability to tank through it. They don't have any physical resistance, which actually wouldn't help against the magic projectiles anyway. And yeah, so they're very, very susceptible. I do get some fire onto my opponent's Glade Lord here, and you can see I do open fire with the handguns, and I'm trying to push the Sterling's Revenge into position. Unfortunately, I do end up darting back here a little bit. You can see I'm trying to posture my cavalry. My opponent does drop a beautiful Prey of Anathema here, shutting down my Knights of the Blazing Sun before they could get around the flank. Though unfortunately for my opponent, I am pushing my Flagellants in to engage against the War Dancers. I'll shortly be pulling the Knights of the Blazing Sun away, just trying to get out of dodge. I do try to tie these guys down with the Captain, though it doesn't quite work out, since they just bypass to go for the Knights. Which is not a bad idea. War Dancers will tear through Knights of the Blazing Sun very, very quickly, because they're a very strong unit. Especially when the Knights don't get a charge. You can see the cannon is still trying to hit the Glady. Over here, some of my swordsmen have actually broken. Recently, like I mentioned, there were changes to arcs, and you can see these archers are actually able to arc over swordsmen. And I'm pretty sure normally this would be considered obstructed, or not normally, but back in Warhammer 1. Over here on the flank, you can see the Glade Riders have kind of worked up the gumption to attack again, and now they're trying to harass me, now that the cannon is focused on the enemy Glady. Poor Boris over here is definitely not having the best time of it. He's being focused by enemy fire, with the branch rates coming in. And of course, our Eternal Guard, Dryads are immune to psychology. Eternal Guard has anti-large bonus. This is definitely going to be a little bit of a struggle. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, his Glady has been caught up in the air in a very compromised position and is being absolutely focused out by my anti-armor missiles, and he's not really able to shut him down. My swordsmen are also rallying, and my opponent has not really capitalized on the fact that his Eternal Guard won these fights to kind of collapse on me. And now my Knights are in his back line. The War Dancers, while being fast, are not fast enough. One of the good things about Knights of the Blazing Sun is they're actually faster than other Empire Heavy Cav. And you can see he's already losing some pretty significant, taking some pretty significant model losses here. My Captain is on these Glade Guard, and it's all going pretty well. Of course, some of these Knights are going to start struggling against the War Dancers with Azrai Spears, so it's going to be important for me to keep the charge going and push on to other units. My other unit of Knights of the Blazing Sun has collapsed on these Dryads and is absolutely pulverizing the Dryads and the Eternal Guard here, who are actually terror routing, which leaves only the Branch Wraith trying to hold. Over here, you can see I'm trying to push the Silver Bullets forward a little bit, trying to get some flank shots on these guys. My opponent, though, gets an absolutely gorgeous Penumbral Pendulum here, which I was not paying enough attention to, and I end up losing over half the HP on this unit, though not many models, only about 10. Over here, though, Boris is fighting the Branch Wraith, or diving in, and he'll probably shortly fight the Branch Wraith. But he's taking some nasty fire from these Glade Guard. Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts do a lot of damage, and I'm trying to focus them down here with my handguns. just to weaken him, make him a little less effective against Boris, who, as you can see, is losing about 400 HP with every volley. Over here, the Glade Riders with Hagbane tips are pursuing and harassing my Knights of the Blazing Sun, but unfortunately at this point for my opponent, he does kind of decide that the game is lost and does decide to GG out. It was still, I think, there was some potential, I think, for a comeback, though my opponent's army was definitely pretty badly mauled. As you can see in the losses were actually fairly comparable, all things considered. My front line was very badly mauled. In exchange, my opponent had lost his Lord, and I still did have my cannon online. So definitely, I think Empire is still pretty competitive. I definitely think it's pretty fun. Knights of the Blazing Sun, I think, are a very good counter to Wood Elves in general, but I also think they're a decent cavalry to bring. They also did go down in price, I do believe, by 50, I think, in Mortal Empires, whereas Reichsguard went up in price by 50, which brought the two units much closer together, which I think is only fair, because Knights of the Blazing Sun do have some disadvantages against Reichsguard. They're much more offensive-minded, while Reichsguard are more well-rounded. Definitely, if you're playing against Wood Elves, although it might seem like a poor idea with Empire with their low armor shooting units to bring any low armor unshielded shooting units to bring any shooting, generally I would try to bring silver bullets at least as Empire. Sometimes even crossbows can be good if you're confident in your ability to kind of get them close. But definitely I would recommend bringing silver bullets, just because even having one ranged unit to pressure your opponent, I think, is very, very solid. And obviously they're actually not bad against enemy skirmishers, especially the stealth type. Definitely, though, good game to my opponent. It was a lot of fun. It was cool to try out some Empire strategies, or some new Empire strategies, I suppose, with changes. Not running a mage definitely feels a little clunky or unusual with Empire. It's definitely a bit of a, I think, spoiled feeling you get with Empire. But as I said, good game. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about Total Warhammer or anything like that, be sure to post them down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.